Welcome back to our interview with director Mike Bassett, director of Solomon Kane. Mike, the film is quite brutal. A lot of fighting in it, a lot of sword play.
Yeah.
How much participation did you have in the choreography of the fighting?
Well, a lot, because one of the reasons I liked the idea of the movie was because I was going to get to do sword fights. No, well, sword fights particularly. I mean, the movie I loved as a kid was Highlander, right? Mm-hmm. And I just loved sword fights. So the opportunity to be able to work with a great fight choreographer, and the guy who did ours was Richard Ryan, who did Troy and did Batman and Stardust. He's a really, really good sword master. So the idea was to have sword fights which were brutal and very, very in your face and quite sort of short. None of this very elaborate sort of balletic type stuff. I wanted the
people aren't leaping about from like.
They're not, and they're not doing things they can't ordinarily do as well. So that was sort of the directive, was to try and make the sword fights, interesting to look at and violent and cool, but only sort of accidentally. Rather than the Hong Kong action version of this, which would be people leaping around on wires, spinning through trees, which I never really liked because it feels like dance. It doesn't feel like an instant explosion of violence from the characters. It feels like something that people have thought about. So the idea was to try and make it feel like it was much more of an of the moment and true to the character.
Yeah,
and it is extremely violent.
Yeah.
I mean, I was very, very surprised actually.
Really?
So is it going to be 12?
I think so, yeah. We don't have a certificate in this country yet. No. In France, it's like a PG. Right. They obviously don't care about people being chopped up in France, but
I don't think that's going to be a 12 somehow.
I think it'll be 12A.
Yeah, because I mean, the chopping up wasn't so bad, but some of the cuts and things.
There's a few.
I mean, I don't mind.
There's a few throats,
and it pushes the boundary.
Yeah. There's that, but listen, I've also cut stuff for the theatrical version.
So does that mean there's going to be an extended cut?
It means there is the possibility of an extended cut, because there's certainly things I can put back in, and there's a moment in the movie which I don't really want to give away, but which is potentially extremely violent and vicious and visceral, which I shot absolutely violent, vicious and visceral, but have pulled it back for the theatrical cut. And one of the reasons I did that was when we previewed the picture with the full-on gore, people were just so like, I can't deal with it. They were actually being bounced out of the movie.
Please tell me this isn't the bit where he suddenly finds his violent streak again.
Yes, it's
the
that.
reason why he finds
that. It is the motivation behind that.
That genuinely shocked me. That moment,
absolutely.
Even the version that we've seen.
Well, there's a version which is really shocking because it's very much more visceral. And the trouble with that moment is because it's such an emotional moment as well. It's a character moment, an emotional moment. Everything comes together in this one idea. To then throw buckets of blood over the moment as well. Actually, people were coming out of the movie. They were busy being upset by the violence and not actually being involved in the characters. And
it's worth to draw a line for the maximum effect.
Absolutely, because the movie's not a horror movie. It has a kind of horror movie vibe to it in places, but it is a fantasy adventure.
I mean, we're not talking Yui Bowl here. We're like,
Please, God, no, let's not talk Yui Bowl here.
The Euro equivalent of the Asian spraying gore everywhere.
No. Except, one of the things we did do, because I wanted to get the level of violence not right, but sort of accurate in the sense of what swords do to people's bodies. Mm-hmm. Now, I've never seen a real sword fight. I don't think anybody has anymore, because it just doesn't happen very much. So I had no idea of what swords do to flesh. I've seen...
Not very nice things.
No, well, now the thing is, what we did is I got the sword master and the stunt guy to get me a dead pig.
Right.
And we hung the pig's carcass up from the studio ceiling, got all the swords and the axes and everything we were going to use, full-on sharp versions, and I said to Richard Ryan, the swordmaster, show me what a sword does. And I can tell you what a sword does. It makes a bloody mess of everything.
Did you have a go?
Of course I had a go.
Oh, fantastic.
But what I also learnt was, and pig flesh and pig skin is very much like human. It's got the same kind of consistency. Yeah. So with a good sword stroke, if you know what you're doing, you can cleave a pig in half. You go between the vertebrae. If you get a lucky strike, it's coming apart. All right. Okay. Now it hits bone, it's going to start deflecting off and makes really interesting, nasty gashes. But the moment you put any kind of armour, clothing, even the thinnest leather armour, the sword doesn't cut anymore. Mm. It really doesn't, because the blade just gets captured by the leather. Yep. And it becomes a crushing weapon, and that's one of the things we realised is they're much more about crushing. So all the cuts, we tried to make it relatively consistent. There's a moment in the movie when Kane cuts the head off a bad guy and it takes him 3 strokes to do it. And that's because it takes 3 strokes to do it.
But that was particularly good because it wasn't a clean sweep of the sword.
Absolutely,
I don't know if I can say it. Can we spoil?
You can spoil that bit.
We'll spoil this bit when he's physically holding the head and going at it like a a butcher.
Yes,
essentially.
Well,
absolutely.
let's just say, folks, the guy does deserve it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
He's a bad guy. They all deserve it. But so there's those kind of things, which I'm not claiming any kind of real veracity to it. But it is, you try and have that inform it a little bit. And there's moments which the sword goes into necks and people and there's blood flying around. It's fun. And that's one of the reasons I like the movie, because it's a fun kind of movie, but it's the very dark end.
It's a
fun.
dark swashbuckler, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it is great fun in an epically nasty.